Welcome. This is roughly the halfway mark of your fire hose experience. On behalf of Jennifer and Nell, who have been an amazing team and who I want to recognize for all their hard work. You've seen that in the interview sessions in particular. I don't know how Nell did what she did, but I hope your interviews went well and you'll have a second set coming up. But we're all three excited to have you meet these caregivers. And as Nell unspotlights me and spotlights our guests, I want to say how grateful we are that they're here. And I'm just going to name their names and tell you a few things. So we have with us Alma Alexander, Letty Arroyo, Vida Bampo, and Marianne Evan. Mark Boyette and Jeanette Perry, I don't think are here yet, but they may come. Wanda Green, Dwayne Hodges, and Delrish Moss. And you should have the bios, which Nell will drop in the chat. We because of the nature of caregiving, a couple have dropped off for last minute problems, but we're really in great hands with the ones we have. So several of you caregivers are actually on the job as I speak, and you're stealing precious moments to share your stories. So I'm really grateful for your voices, in particular if you're caring for someone. Nell is going to explain the breakout process again, maybe a little bit more slowly at the very end, just to get you in there. But we know from the plenaries that most of you, if not all of you, have had a caregiving chapter. And so you already know the consequences personally, and it's a little hard to remove yourself from what you've experienced, and this might be an opportunity to do that. There are currently 53 million of us, and that's up 10 million in the last decade, so it's kind of daunting. And a quarter of us care for 2 or more care recipients. And as we heard from Jason Resendez, these caregiving situations are increasingly complex, highly intense, and some of these people here tonight will share that aspect too. These are real people from the front lines, and they illustrate the vastness of the topic. We selected them thanks to Nicole and others, particularly for that reason. But I wanted to point you to one other resource in the video section of the website. There's a whole section of caregiver testimonials. You'll find dozens there. So please consider looking there. And also you'll hear from Julia Yarbo, who's one of our moderators. She has a Facebook page with caregiver testimonials and people who might be willing to tell their stories. So as you're planning your stories, I wanted you to know about those resources. So as for tonight, as you're thinking about these pieces, if I had the opportunity in a breakout with some of these people, I would be considering how family members are on an island and isolated without the bandwidth to pull resources toward them, and without success in getting tangible financial aid and complex care, as we've heard throughout these past couple of days. I would ask them how they feel. Do they feel seen by their family members, by their loved ones, healthcare providers, or social services providers? And I would ask about their personal, financial, and health sacrifices. All of these people have been extremely candid with me, and I believe they're ready to be candid with you. And the stories are daunting. And then finally, I would ask them, and someone said this in one of our sessions, what do they need? Policy has to be driven by what people actually need. So the more we can aggregate responses to what they need, the better our policies will be. I wanted to just highlight 2 people, and Nell, if you could drop the spots to just Vida Bampo, or maybe Vida Wave, and Marianne Evan. Vida is a remarkable professional who by day oversees a nursing staff at a senior living community in Northwest DC. She's an RN. She works a 50-hour week, and at night, unbelievably, she works 12-hour shifts in people's homes, and that's how I came to know her. When I met my DC neighbor, Marianne Evan, Marianne, just wave so we can see who you are, and learned that Marianne was 82 and caregiving for a 102-year-old mother who was having something of a crisis, I told Vida, who got in her car, this is gonna make me cry, before work in the wee hours to go help Marianne and her mom. And it was an extraordinary act of generosity on Vida's part and mercy. And I think Marianne and I will be forever grateful to Vida for that. It was an unbelievable thing to witness. And it made me mad because Marianne's mother seemingly had been discharged from the hospital prematurely into Marianne's care, and Marianne found that she was not quite strong enough to deal with the situation at 82 and with other challenges. So um, this family caregiving crisis really hits home. Um, and so many people don't have the ability to call in a VIDA. I wish I could give every single one of you a VIDA. Um,
So should we just
Candid camera?
Yeah,
Hey,
just jump. Can
hey,
we jump
hey.
in? Dwayne, I read your bio and I thought it was just so interesting and it's incredible what you're managing to do. I don't know. Did we want to start by hearing Dwayne's story straight from Dwayne?
Okay, well, I've had several caregiver responsibilities over the last 30 years. But the two, I guess, and Julia Yarbrough is the one that I guess referred me or recommended me, since I've known her. I did have to take care of my mother prior to her death. Now, the thing was, I was in Buffalo, New York, and she was in Somerville, South Carolina, which she had moved to take care of her mother and never got a chance to move back. And it was interesting because my mother, while an honor student back in her educational years, was also schizophrenic. And so my undergraduate degree is psychology, and part of that was trying to learn how to deal with my mother and whatever it was she was dealing with. So as she got older, she also had lung cancer. And so between those two ailments, between the schizophrenia and the lung cancer, managing her health really became a challenge. While I was doing that, I was also going through the breakup of my first marriage and eventually divorce. And so I was trying to, because I had equal care of my kids, my sons. And so what I would do is I would take care of the boys, and, when it was their mother's turn, I would fly to South Carolina, take my mother to her doctor visits, make sure her food was there, because if she had an episode where she thought somebody, and to go into the family background, and I know it's only 20 minutes, I'm not going to drag it out, but I don't know, South Carolina Geechees, they work roots and all that kind of stuff. And so she was always afraid somebody was doing some kind of black magic on her. And so I'd go down and buy her all new clothes and everything, particularly underwear. And then I'd come back 3 to 6 weeks later, and she had thrown everything out or burned it because she said, I know somebody put something in my clothes, and it made me forget everything, but not, but she hadn't been taking her medication, it's schizophrenia. And so the flying back and forth, I was basically her primary caregiver for about 5 years, but that was mostly by phone with occasional visits. In the last 18 months, it was every 6 weeks or so, anywhere from 3 to 9 weeks. But on the average, every 6 weeks, I had to fly down to South Carolina because my cousins down there did not want to bother with her because of issues between her and her sisters, who were their mothers. And so there was no help. There just was no help for her. There was no community help. And because of her mental condition, she was ostracized a lot in the community, her neighborhood. And so she'd go to the doctor and they treat her one way. When I'd show up, and I wasn't one of my cousins. I wasn't from down there. I was educated. I wasn't angry. I just was aware of the laws and the responsibilities that hospitals, whether it's the mental hospital or, the regular hospitals or regular doctors, what they would need to do. And so when I would show up, she became a different patient. And it was obvious she was getting different care when I was there than when she wasn't. And so I tried to do the best I could. I was there as much as possible. My brothers, my older brother mainly, was very, appreciative of me going back and forth because he had his own issues. And I know when she passed, her hospice workers, I felt, I just felt like a failure because I was back and forth. And at that point, I had to be the son she raised me to be. And I was fighting for custody of my boys. So as will happen, that last time that I was going down there to see her before she passed, I had to go to court to make sure I held on my sons, because I know she would not rest in peace in eternity if I didn't have custody of my boys. And so I went to court. I didn't have the money to go down there that week. And so when she passed, she was alone. And I found out what one of my cousins heard and then called me. So then I had to get my brother, who was on another part, the other end of New York and Long Island, and, go down and handle the funeral business and all that kind of stuff. But, I felt horrible. And I met her hospice workers, who I had spoken to on the phone a couple of times over the last month. And they made me feel better, because they said, Mr. Hodges, there are people who live 30 miles down the road who do not see their mother as much as you saw yours. And I thank God for that conversation, because I would have just drowned in my guilt. So that was the first one. And to speed the story along, and I do believe part of it was the stress of between the divorce and taking care of my mother. I developed leukemia, and type of leukemia had ate up my blood cells. And so I eventually had a stroke. So once I got back on my feet like I said, I went bankrupt trying to take care of my mother. Once I got back on my feet, then I got sick, and I'm back in that hit again. So I was on disability, and I had several elder relatives who had moved down to where I am now in North Carolina. And, they were supposed to be taken care of by my younger brother, but he got HIV and passed. And then an older cousin who was supposed to come down and take care of them, and he had renal failure and passed. And so there was nobody down with the seniors, and my cousins and my brothers were like, "You're not doing anything. You go down there and take care of the aunties." So I moved to North Carolina, being disabled, and to take care of my aunts. It was 3 of them to start, but one of them, I'm at my office, my lights keep going up. Their granddaughters came and got her, but then my aunts went and got another brother to bring him down. So it's like, well, he's down here taking care of us, you can come down too. So I was taking care of the 3 of them as best I could in my disabled condition. I will say this, I willed myself, as I'm saying, this isn't the actual office, it's my fake office, but I'm at my office. I work at Fayetteville State University. I willed myself back off of disability, because like, I can't do this just one more day, Lord thing. I got to do something different. And so, slowly but surely, my uncle, he got ready to pass. And so his daughters came and got him because he had a lot of money. I shouldn't have said that. But, and so he passed with them. And then, so I was down here with my 2 aunts. It happens to be 2 aunts that I lived with when I was a kid, when my parents broke up, and, my mother left us when she went to take care of her mother with my father. And so, so I'm taking care of the 2 aunts, and everything was great when the older one was alive, because everyone came to visit. She was the one that took care of everybody when we were all little kids. She took care of my father when he was a kid, because they were, I think, 12 years apart. So she was the caregiver aunt. Once the caregiver aunt passed, the visits stopped. And so they had a house down the street from me, and I would just go down back and forth. Once she passed, I had to move the other aunt in with me, because she was scared to live alone. She was the baby daughter, the baby sister. She had never lived alone her entire life. She was in her 80s and had never lived alone. And so I moved her in with me, my ex-wife, who was living with me, and my daughter. And so I'm taking care of the 3 of them, and nobody is happy about it. Since my daughter was a baby, so it wasn't big, but the other 2 weren't very thrilled. But my aunt took a lot of care. And the thing was, I had cousins, basically just cousins, and one uncle in South Carolina that said, well, just bring her here. You can bring her and drop her off with us and do whatever. But she wouldn't go because she didn't want them to know how needy she was, that she couldn't, cook for herself and not really wash for herself. She could wash her body reasonably well. And that was it. Everything else, basically, I did. And so she didn't want anybody to know, so she wouldn't get in the car and go anywhere outside of town. And no one would come to visit because the caregiver aunt was gone. Because, when Aunt Mary was here, you can come, Aunt Mary would cook for you, she'd spoil you, she'd drive you around. This one, not so much. So for the next 7 years, that was pretty much my life. And for my 55th birthday, because after, my aunt moved in, my ex moved out. When my 55th birthday, my birthday present was my ex babysat my aunt so I can have 24 hours to myself. And other than, going to my son's graduation, that was it. I did, the year before she passed, I wanted to take my kids to see my father because, he was getting older and he couldn't get down to North Carolina anymore from New York. But no one would come to take care of my aunt. So it took me $800 to fly her to Georgia to a cousin's house to watch her for a week and a half so that I can take my kids up to see my grandfather. I mean, my father, their grandfather, up to see my father. And when I got back, that was it. That was it. It was just us. It was an experience. It was an experience. If you've never been trapped in your own house, because all I could do for 7 years was go to work and go back home. And as a guy that back in his 20s never stayed home much, that was an experience. Different in the 50s anyway, but yeah, it was an experience. So that's my story. She passed 4 years ago now, 3 years ago now. Yeah, right before COVID.
Did you ever pay for help through all those caregiving exercises?
I found out about all those caregiving services after she passed. There was a senior center that I tried to get her to go to, and her response was, I don't want to be around all those old people. So, that would be admitting if she was going to a senior center, she had to admit she was old. She didn't know, I don't know what she was thinking, but yeah. And she started to, the medication that she was taking she had so many medications, would make her hallucinate. So she always thought she saw bugs coming out of her hand. So she would sit there and throw the bugs away all day. And and then sometimes she would just be throwing her slipper around the house because she was like, there's a mice in the house. I said, that's not a mouse. There's no mice in the house. I see a mice. And the educator in me said, no, you see a mouse. It's plural mice. It's an argument. So I just said, okay, there's no mice. There's no mice. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm reliving my mother again. So I could tell you stories about my mother's stuff. That was a whole different set of stuff. Because like I said, she's brilliant, honest student. But when you hear her talking in the morning and I'm like, so Mom, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to the alien sitting on the garbage can. And I'm like, oh, well, what are y'all talking about? Because to tell her there's no alien sitting on the garbage can just was not going to work. So you just had to run with it. So, yeah. That's my story. But during the process of all this stuff, like I said, I got ill. I came back. Now, the second time after taking care of my aunt, I ended up with brain tumor and prostate cancer. So yeah, I got sick again. But but I'm fine now. Yeah. I'm like
Dwayne, it looks like Christine might have a question for you, Dwayne.
Oh, okay, fine. Yes.
I do. Hi, Dwayne. Thank you for joining us and sharing that really personal story. I was wondering how your experience affected your relationship with your other family members. Did this put a strain on the family?
I was a little bitter towards some of my cousins for a while. because the aunts that I was taking care of here, they didn't have any children. And like I said, one of them was the matriarch, the community mother. And, so you could say she had 40 kids because, me and my cousins. The other one was just another kid that she took care of, the younger aunt. And I was a little mad because it's like, come on, y'all. I'm by myself and I'm a guy. And the majority of my cousins are women. Nobody's coming. Only one person, not trying to pick. I mean, they have their own lives, but only one person actually offered to come and watch her. And that was one of my cousin's ex-wives. She was the only one that offered. And so, but then, as my father told me, he said, it's not the choices that decide what you do, it's the lack of choice. You got no choice, you know what you're going to do. And that's something he always said. So every time I'm like, Daddy, this is wearing me out. He's like, well, you just got to do it. That's just all there is to it. And that's how he was. And so I did what I was raised to do. I took care of it. But, I don't fault anybody. I was a little salty for a minute, but, and I couldn't blame them and not blame my brother. My brother was getting his life together. So, and then, my baby brother was getting his life together. My younger brother passed away 2 months after my mother. So it really only was me.
Were there things that your employer could have done or did do that helped?
Yes. He was a good supervisor. Now he's my best friend. My supervisor allowed me to do whatever. If I say I gotta take my daughter, my aunt to the doctor, okay, fine. I have to take my aunt to a clinic, okay, fine. I gotta take her for sleep, okay, fine. And that was it. His thing was, as long as you get it done, you get it done. Then, because he very, very close to my daughter, they have a very special relationship. My daughter would say, Dr. Evelyn, we need to have a party at your house. And he'd say, okay, well, they'd make special accommodations for my aunt and special food for her, so she'd feel special. I got her to go to my church, from her little church to mine, and I got her into, part of the seniors service ministry. So she didn't do activities with them like on a regular basis, but anytime they were having dinners or, if it was free food or they were giving away Christmas presents, then, she was there. So I did have that little bit of help, having basically taking her to church. And there was always somebody to watch her. I can go sing with the choir and not have to worry about, I got to get back home because, she didn't want to change churches. But once she did and they started spoiling her, then, that helped a lot.
Thanks.
Did you have doctors along the way? You mentioned, I think it was your mother talking to aliens, and you couldn't bother saying, that's not really happening, which is something you either learn from experience or somebody gives you that advice, like don't bother pushing back. Did you have doctors or people, social workers, anyone who was advising you along the way to help you figure out how to deal with everything?
Not really. One doctor did, because, I had been fighting with my mother to give up smoking since I was maybe 3 years old. And then my oldest son was 3 years old. He was like, why does grandma smoke when it makes her sick? And so after a while, I was talking to her psychiatric doctor. And I'm like, with all the ailments I have, I said, especially with this lung cancer so bad, I have to make her stop smoking. He said, oh, no, that is the last thing you need to do. Leave breakout room. Let me finish this real fast. He said, because the nicotine is the only thing holding her brain together. He said, if she stops, she said, because her brain is failing. He said she had retrograde schizophrenia, something like that. Said, as it stands right now, she's going to die from lung cancer within the next, probably in about another year to a little bit more. If she stops smoking, she'll lose her mind before she dies. So that's the choice you have to make. So I made the choice of, for the first time ever, the year she passed away, I bought her the first pack of cigarettes I ever bought her. So I was like, if she's going to die, I want her mind at least as strong as possible before then. So, that's all. I guess that's all. I'm sorry. I'm long winded. I know it.
You're awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
I think what the bio probably doesn't talk about, I think it talks about my career. It talks about my being with the Miami Police Department and being police chief in Ferguson and all those things. What it doesn't talk about is why I left Ferguson, and it was after my mother suffered a stroke, and I suddenly found myself in the position of coming back to Florida to be her caregiver, because while I have other siblings, they just didn't feel they were in a position or could handle the responsibilities. And I left Ferguson to do that, and it was actually a big learning curve for me, because my mom had been a very independent, she was very much a go-getter, independent person who took care of us. And so finding myself in this caregiver role was a big transition, because I had been chasing career for a number of years and those things, but of course family comes first. So it turned into one of those things where she suffered a stroke. She was in rehab for a substantial period of time, and then coming out, she had limited mobility. That has improved over time, but very limited mobility, which caused me to have to learn to do things like help her get around the house, help her in and out of the bathtub, help her to prepare meals and do those things for herself. Of course, doctor's visits and prescriptions and all those things that come along with any medical situation. Fortunately, she's doing much better, but during the course of the pandemic, when we were all in lockdown, while I was away at work one day and she was home with my nephew, who's her grandson, she also suffered a fall and broke her femur, which put her not only in the hospital for a substantial period of time, with a metal rod placed in her leg, but also took her away from the house for quite a bit of time and away from family, because of course with the lockdown, there was no contact other than Zoom visits with her and regular communication with the hospital and the rehab facility. She's home now. Still, the mobility is still limited. She's confined mostly to a wheelchair, but she can walk in short spurts, and she has some independence, but not nearly the independence that she's used to, and that for her causes lots of frustration. And so that requires lots and lots of tender, loving care in terms of conversations and being able to sort of counsel her through the joys of really what is life, and the fact that we're still happy to have her around.
Mhm. Where in Florida are you?
I'm in Pembroke Pines, which is just about 15 minutes north of Miami.
Can I ask you, Delrish, you were doing the career track, you said, until you started caring for your mom. I'm wondering what kind of training you had to do that caregiving, and also now in hindsight that you've been doing it, what you wished you would have had.
Well, absolutely no training whatsoever. It was one of those things, there's an old saying, nothing teaches like the doing. So you get in there and do. With the rehab facility, they did give us some things like how to get her in and out of a car, how to help her in and out of the tub, that sort of thing. But really there was nothing that really prepared me for things. And actually, probably the best trainer I had is her coaching me through helping her. But that's it. And I do wish that there was some sort of place that I knew about that could have prepared me. But these things, this came on unexpectedly, and it was just one of those things. You dive in and you get moving.
But I want to just kind of ask you to dive in just for a second on when you say you would have liked more training. Are any specifics, like any areas that you were really out of your league that someone could have given you a guide or some tips?
I think lots of what I would like to have had was just, as a man, it had not been my tradition to bathe my mom. It had not been my tradition to help her in and out of bed, and certainly it had not been something that I was prepared for in terms of even dealing with her mental health issues with regard to suddenly not being the independent person that you are. And so there were lots of challenges with that. And oftentimes, you know, you kind of wished you had at least someone you could kind of talk to and go through that, because my siblings really kind of shut down on that because they weren't prepared to handle it. So not that they were not willing, but just emotionally not able. So you find yourself kind of alone trying to figure things out, and you just wish in every aspect there was someone that can kind of help you through those things. But you know, again, I don't think there's anything that can really prepare you.
Did
Can
you
consider?
elaborate? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
Your bio, you say it was a wake-up call to get you off the career ladder. I was curious about that. If you could elaborate on.
Well, so I've spent the better part of 38 years in law enforcement. You know, I started as a street patrolman through narcotics, working narcotics and homicide investigation, all the way up to retiring as a major and then becoming the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri. And Ferguson was certainly a challenge because it required just every aspect of me, really. 15-hour days, 7 days a week for almost the better part of 3 years. And so I was really focused on that. I divorced in 2015, gone into Ferguson in early 2016, and was really just kind of all consumed by career. And there's kind of guilt in that. Family was always there, but they weren't necessarily the primary focus until this really wake-up call. You know, my mom's getting older. Health is failing now, and I could lose her. And even after losing my dad in 2016 to a stroke, there wasn't a closeness of the relationship there between he and I. He was in Alaska, I was in South Florida, and so it just didn't dawn on me that I'd have a situation like this with my mom. My mom to me has always been invincible, and so you know, I just never thought there was anything that could be her kryptonite, really.
I'm curious if, if you've had conversations with her about sort of, as she ages and becomes less independent, like what she wants and how the two of you sort of work together to create goals or communicate about like what kinds of care she wants, what kind of a life she wants, and like what's possible. How do you work that out?
Well, you know, it's kind of hard because my mom, in her mind, she is still going to be here forever, and this is just a momentary setback. And as she makes improvement, she sees a lot more improvement down the line. And so it's really hard to have those conversations with her because she's not really ready or willing to face the fact that, we're actually getting closer to end of life than beginning. And so it's been really difficult to have those conversations. However, in some things we do kind of broach just a few things. But my mom really thinks that, after she retired from the military and then went to the Postal Service, she went into real estate. And she's actually talking to me about helping her study for her real estate license because she thinks she's really going to be back out and doing that sort of thing.
Well, more power to your mother on that one. More power to her. I have a quick question for you. How has this changed you how has this changed you as a person? And I'm just wondering if there are any financial obstacles in your family in terms of caring for your mother.
Well, fortunately, between her retirement, my salary, and some other things, we're not in a bad situation financially. I think the challenges really are more mental in terms of just facing the transition and facing the new realities. Even recently, there was a situation where a particular medication that she has to take, for a while it was out of coupon. And so it went from a $50 copay to $600 a month. And I was able to pick, for me, you think about other families that are not so fortunate. It wasn't, there was never a pause for us. And, fortunately, we were able to get her back on that coupon and it's back down to $50 a month. But financially, there were no challenges. I think most of the challenge was really mentally and emotional.
Have you ever relied on a home care worker to come in occasionally, at least to give you respite?
I do have a home care worker that comes in the daytime now, and that has allowed me to transition back to a less demanding career in law enforcement. Again, I'm at Florida International University, but I work from 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. I'm back home. University policing is nothing like municipal policing, so it's not the 80-hour, 90-hour week. It's it's more the 40-hour, 35-hour week. And on Wednesdays, I work from home.
What do you do at Florida International?
I'm a captain with the police department in charge of community outreach, day shift patrol, and public information.
How did you find the home care worker?
That was a recommendation. I have a cousin who's a doctor, and he was actually able to help me in terms of finding the right person, the right fit, and his experience was a tremendous help.
You mentioned that you weren't totally ready to do some of the tasks, like, helping your mom get in and out of the tub or get in bed. How did she feel about having you do that? Did she resist that?
She was just as taken aback by it as I was. It's very difficult for a woman who's very modest in that way to suddenly have, the kid she used to change now having to do the same for her. So she was a bit shy by it and a bit appalled, I would say, but we got through it.
How isolating, or was becoming a caregiver isolating for you?
It was very much because, again, with my career, I've always had an audience of a lot of people on a regular basis. I've always been that person who everyone is calling upon, in Ferguson, an entire town. And I found that it was a lot of time with just me and my mom. Now, I'm grateful for that time because it also gave us time to sort of reconnect to closeness. I still remember fondly when my sister and brother would be asleep. She and I would get up in the middle of the night, have a grilled cheese sandwich and some tomato soup in the middle of the night and just talk. So we've had a lot more of those. And so while there have been a lot of setbacks, there are some things that are really near and dear to my heart in terms of just heart-to-heart conversations and getting to know each other fully all over again.
What advice would you give other caregivers who suddenly find themselves in a caregiving role? What things could you say to them to help guide their way? Because you didn't have that guidance.
Yeah, I think the biggest guidance I would give them is don't be afraid to reach out. It's kind of hard to figure out kind of where to reach out, but don't be afraid to reach out. For me, it was one of those things that I've always been in charge. I've been in charge of a city. I've been in charge of major units of a police department. So, I've got to be able to be the person to do this. There's no challenge that I can't face. And this was very humbling for me in terms of, this is everything outside of the training that I'm used to. And, you realize that you can't conquer the world as you think you can. And so I would say, don't be ashamed. Don't be shy about it. And if you can reach out, even if it's just calling a friend, reach out.
Would it have been helpful if you could have had the home care worker for more hours?
It would have been very helpful. And I'm fortunate because she is getting a lot of her independence back. She's able to walk in short bursts. She can actually get herself to the car and things like that. And so there's a lot of improvement, and those things are helpful because she's helping me to take care of her. But during those times, if I'd had the home care worker sooner, it would have been better, and more hours, it certainly would have been helpful.
Why don't you have her for more hours?
Well, I don't have her for more hours now, mainly because Mom doesn't want her for more hours. She wants her during the times that I'm away, so that she can do things. And now it gives me the freedom. I work out 4 times a week. I have time to do that. I have time to get things done, and she's there when I need her, and so that is helpful. But in terms of just me time, I'd like a little bit more of that sometimes too, because while you're taking care of others, kind of taking care of your own mental health is very important as well.
I'm curious, does is your mom, sounds like she has quite a personality. Does she have like a social life still? And how's she connecting to like people outside of you and the caregiver and your family?
Yeah, that has really just started. My mother has a brother who's somewhat of a hermit, and so he kind of disappears and reappears. Well, fortunately, he's reappeared in terms of, and so they've spent a lot of time together, and they talk about the old days when they were both in the Army. So they spend time. And recently, she had an outing with two friends that were in the military with her that she hasn't seen in over 30 years. And so there's that reconnection because one of those friends has moved back to Florida. So little things are starting to come back into play, but for a long time, it was just me and her.
Has this negatively impacted your retirement savings and your trajectory as far as what you envisioned your retirement, just financially?
Fortunately, no, it hasn't. And I'm fortunate because while it's been very expensive. Fortunately, I retired pretty well. I planned pretty well, and I've got other passive income that I had prepared for because I planned to be rich by this time in life. And while I'm not rich, I'm not in a bad financial situation, and that's very fortunate because it's helpful to her situation.
But you had retired before you became a caregiver, or did the caregiving force you to retire? I guess that's maybe what I had thought.
No, I had actually retired in 2016 from the city of Miami, and then I went on to become the police chief in Ferguson, Missouri. And so collecting a pension, other income, and I had taken on another job with another salary. Now, that forced me to leave the Ferguson job, but fortunately, I've been able to take the job now at Florida International University, and that actually pays more than the Ferguson job and a lot less work.
You have to work. Will you have to work longer in years than you intended because of this period of your life?
No, actually working now is a choice, not a necessity. And so that is another blessing that I count.
So I just want to recap. You had retired from your job in Miami, and then you were offered, so you were fully retired there, but then you were offered the position in Ferguson, which you took. And then you left the job in Ferguson because of the needs of your mother.
Yes, I was actually in the process of signing an additional contract with Ferguson. I'd done 3 years, and I was in the process of signing a 5-year contract. And the stroke occurred just as we had negotiated the contract, and so I ended up not signing it and having to leave.
Mm-hmm. Was that a difficult decision to make?
It was a very difficult decision because when I went to Ferguson, I went there with a lot of things. I was very intentional about what I hoped to accomplish while I was there. At that time, Ferguson was the epicenter of everything that was police. And so success there would have been a huge feather in my cap. And while we made lots of strides there, I didn't get to accomplish everything that I set out to accomplish. So that was an adjustment for me from a mental perspective, but it wasn't a hard adjustment because mom, you get one mom.
So it sounds like you don't regret that decision.
I have no regrets. No regrets. I talk to people in Ferguson all the time who regret that I left. And they've actually even come to visit, but
have you been back to Ferguson?
I have not. I will be going back there next month briefly for a thing with the courts. And so that's, we've got all kinds of things planned in terms of visiting people and all this sort of stuff. And even citizens in Ferguson call me on a pretty regular basis and keep up with me on social media as well. So I left the town, but the town didn't leave me.
Will your mom be coming with you, or will she stay with caregivers?
No, she's going to be here with caregivers because while she is much more mobile, traveling by plane is something we're just not ready for.
Right.
I'm sorry, how old is your mother? Did I miss that?
She's 75. She's actually 17 years older than me.
Is she expected to recover then, or to get back on her own?
You know, there are a lot of things that they didn't expect to happen that are starting to happen. Walking in short spurts, and they're getting longer every day. So she is defying what they expected. And so while I don't know what to expect, I'm very hopeful, and she's positive.
This was super helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for telling your amazing story.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really nice to meet you.
No, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
No, thank you very much. Maybe I'll see you at FIU one day.
Yeah, please.
Welcome back. We're just going to give it a second for all the rooms to close.
Is it okay if I completely stop recording now?
Yes,
Thank you
very
so
much for doing
much.
that.
Really
And
appreciate it.
you'll want to render it after. Long day's journey into night, everyone. That was, I just from my observations, it was rather intense. It's real. There was a lot of realness to it. It's heart-wrenching. I want to thank our guests. I'm going to ask Nell to just spotlight them so we can see them all in one shot. We may be one spotlight shy. So Alma, Dwayne, Marianne, Vida, Letty. You got two more for me? Wanda. Delrish. And who are we missing? Zoom only allows you to spotlight so many, so I'm just want to.
That's everyone. That's everyone.
I just want to thank you guys so much. If fellows want to open their mics and express thanks, it's extremely moving to know you and to hear your stories. And unless you say otherwise, I will be happy to connect you to our fellows directly, because I'm sure that many of them have follow-ups. And just, good luck in what lies before you. A lot of you have gotten through your caregiving chapters, and some are in the middle. And we never know when the next one awaits us. Did you want to spot anyone else, Nell?
No, that's everyone.
That's everyone. Okay, I've lost track. Fellows, anyone want to give the last word? We had technically till 8:15. I will stay on, as will Jennifer, for any questions you might have, but I totally understand that this was light and heavy at the same time, and that it's maybe enough for tonight. But I'm opening the floor to for any last comments from fellows.
Just to thank you for your honesty.
Nina. Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I saw the hand first. So Nina, and then was it Dartinia who said that?
I think I was going to say the same thing that was just said. I realize all of you are very busy and have a lot of demands, and I just appreciated the candor and the time, and some of your answers really, some I expected and others I didn't, and I'll be thinking about what you all said tonight as I sign off, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. Dartinia, I interrupted you, I think. Was it Dartinia?
Well, I was going just very closely what Nina said. I appreciate your candor, and it does leave you with a lot to think about, and a lot of gratitude for everything that you've shared and for the work that you do.
Wanda, you just put a chat in. Why don't you say it with your own voice? You're mute, so unmute.
Hi, Caitlin. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the fellows. Just really appreciate the empathy and support in our role in our lives as caregivers, because we don't get to see that often enough. And please feel free to be in touch. Thank you.
Amen to that. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Wanda.
that's right, Marianne.
Ronnie, you have your hand up?
I do. I don't have anything much more to add. It's been said so well already before me, but this was an amazing 2 hours. I appreciate so much the work that went on beforehand to make this happen, because it's just amazing, Caitlin and Nell and everybody involved with this, and all of you people who participated and the people I was lucky enough to hear from. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend time with us and to share as much as you have shared. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ronnie. And I knew in my core that this would be the heart and soul of our event. And I feel from you that it sort of was. So thank you. Christine, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone as well. It was really a privilege to hear your stories. And is it inappropriate to throw a question out to all of the caregivers?
Let's do that, but first, could I just get a quick question? Go ahead, do it. It might
My
go long,
question
but-
was just if your experience has prompted any of you to draft a care plan for yourself, or to do anything, to prep for the possibility that you may need caregiving.
Absolutely. I've started already. I had long-term care, but I'm looking at things like, got to tell the folks where I have insurance policies and who to call to stop the retirement, and who's my doctor and so on. So I'm starting already.
Yeah, I happen to be a
Put
lupus.
Vida's name at the top of your list.
Yes.
Wanda.
I happen to be a lupus patient, so my journey started about 17 years ago. So I only live by a medical care plan, and upon taking the role of helping my sweet mother and being her caregiver for 10 years, she's kind of like on that plan, but for dementia, for cancer, and her particular underlying conditions. So I think it's really important to keep it handy, and also to, what do you call it, to refresh it, because things do change and times change. So what we were doing 10 years ago, there's an update to it, or maybe something new has come out that you can add to it, but very important.
I see one more question. I don't want to jump on our guest for saying that, but I just want to see if Jo has something to add quickly. Jo, you're mute.
I just wanted to say that what struck me mostly was the capacities that everyone had developed over their years of caregiving, and that these truly, we've listened to experts at the academic level and policy level, but you all are experts, and I hope that there is a way to cordon that information on down the line, because nobody else but you and some other caregivers have it. So thank you very much.
All right, with that, I think we're sort of at the end. I just want to add a personal thanks to Vida Bampo, who literally saved my life last December. I wouldn't really be in the whole piece without her. So she has my gratitude and will forever for that. So that's my editorial. And I thank you all for coming and for leaning into this. I know it was hard, but it was really beautiful.